What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Wave. Welcome back to the Game 1 coverage of Round 1. We're going to pick up where we left off last year, where we essentially were, taking a look at every single game as they progress. We're slightly a little behind because Game 1s were over on Sunday, I believe, but I was unavailable Sunday and Monday. It is Tuesday morning, so we have, I think today and tomorrow's last day for game two. So we have enough time to cover game one, and then we'll be back for game two, in the same cadence. So to begin, we're going to start with the first game of the NBA playoffs, that being the Cleveland Cavaliers versus the Toronto Raptors, the 4-5 series out east. In our prediction video, I took Cleveland in 7, I believe, or 6. And Cleveland, they came out, they did not disappoint at all. We'll get to Cleveland in a second, but let's start with the Toronto Raptors. I haven't seen them in the postseason prior to this, so this is like one of their first times actually making a playoff spot since like the DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry days. And honestly, they have a pretty solid team. Looking at their roster with R.J. Barrett and Brandon Ingram, Emmanuel Quickly, who unfortunately did not play this game. But they have a decent squad. They have decent size. Shooting might be one of their not so strong points, but they have a pretty solid team in terms of size. Um, but after looking at that game, it was like towards the end of the game, some of their stars it was a little hard for them to get going. Brandon Ingram was 5 for 9, 0 for 1 from three, only 17 minutes of action. Only in 36 minutes, only 17 points. Not the best performance out there, especially on the defensive side of things. Um, you know, then you have R.J. Barrett. He gave up a good 24. The team high on efficient shooting, 50% from three. Just not really enough. You need a little bit more on that side of things. No starters with plus minuses above 0, which is never a good sign. Your most production really coming from AJ Lawson, and that's more of like on the defensive run side of things. He had 3 assists with 2 points, and he didn't really get too much action out there. But anybody that saw north of 20 minutes, you didn't really get too much value out of them on the Toronto Raptors. Going over to Cleveland, it's a far different story. They went by 13, and I'm looking through the data to see where this 13 points could have manifested itself from, and I think it was just an overall team effort. First of all, you have James Harden with 22 and 10, which is it's pretty nice standard for James Harden, 10 assists. Donovan Mitchell with the 30 bomb, over 50% from shooting from three and the field, and the free throw line. So he had a pretty efficient game. 4 assists, 4 turnovers. Not really no one. I'm not really looking for Donovan Mitchell to have the craziest assist turnover ratio, but 4 assists is still pretty decent to put up in the game. It's respectable. So 14 assists with those two combined. Evan Mobley, 17, nice strong 17, 7 rebounds, and Jared Allen with 10 and 7. So the two bigs, getting in their action in. No blocks, still between the two of them, and then you have Dean Wade with, he only did have 5, but he did have some strong minutes on the floor. So the starters for the Cavs just, they single-handedly outplayed the starters for the bench squad, and then you have Sam Merrill coming out with 7 off the bench as well as Max Strus with 24. They're doing their thing, so it was a good, solid effort. And just be in the lookout for more teams to shrink their rotations as the playoffs goes along. But Cleveland has a good, nice rotation going along, and we can see on the side that, like I said, we are recording this a few days out of touch. So we can see that Cleveland went on to win the second game, but we'll get into that later on this week. We're focusing on game one, and game one was it was a pretty good show out for the Cleveland Cavaliers and James Harden. Good debut for that team. And yeah, we'll just keep our eye on that team, and we'll cover game two either Wednesday night or Thursday morning. But yeah, that's a crazy start for the Cleveland Cavaliers. They're off to a good start with this Raptor squad, and it's like they have the potential to sweep or gentlemen sweep them. So let's keep our eye on them. But we'll just we'll keep our wits end about it. Let's see if Brandon Ingram or RJ Barrett can step it up, but we'll keep our eye out on that. But let's go over to the next matchup. All right, and next in the series we have the Denver Nuggets at or versus the Minnesota Timberwolves, and this one is my sleeper pick for the series. I think this one could go to 7. I think I said that already, but give me Denver. And in game one, they did not disappoint at all. We'll start with the away team. I bit my lip when I spoke. We'll start with the away team. We have Julius Randle and that squad, coming through. Not really. Every person on the starting lineup had double digits. A little inefficient, except for Rudy Gobert. He went 8 for 9. 8 for 9 with 10 rebounds and 2 assists. So not a bad performance for Rudy Gobert per se. DiVincenzo with 4 for 7 from three, 12 points out of that. Pretty solid lineup. With with 1 turnover, 2 assists, 4 rebounds. He was pretty much everywhere on the floor, which is great. Anthony Edwards, 2 for 9, not really the best shooting. From three, a little inefficient with his 22 points. 9 rebounds, 7 assists is great. 3 blocks, definitely doing his thing. A little like I mean, he could have shot the ball a little bit better, but sometimes you make him, sometimes you don't. So, and not the worst game from them. Um, this game was lost by 11, and Jaden McDaniels 6 for 14, no threes. I mean, that could definitely play a part into it. Definitely Rudy Gobert and Jokic battling it out. Kyle Anderson with no points, just 7 minutes of just, I guess, garbage time buckets. Same thing with Bones Highland, not really able to get off any real shots. And then you can clearly see they cut their rotation down by 5 players, so they know who they want to run this postseason, and they have their 10 guys who they are deciding that they're going to stick with. We'll see if the adjustments are made. Obviously, this was recorded after game two that they did come back and win. But again, like you said, same thing with that other series. We're going to get to that in the following game. We're only focused on game one here. And yeah, Jamal Murray really went out to play. I mean, he had 16 free throws, 30 points overall, 7 assists with 5 rebounds. Solid game. Jokic with double-double, 25, a triple-double actually, 25, 13, and 11. Not bad at all. Putting up, 2 threes. He's doing his thing out there. Then you have really, those two really came out the ball. Aaron Gordon, he had a late, he had some dunks in the game. 17 and 8, solid numbers out there. Again, they also did not play their entire team. They cut their rotation down to 9 players, actually. They have Tim Hardaway off the bench. He's been lighting it up with his three-point shooting. And yeah, Denver is a solid foe. They did lose their second game on Monday last night. But this is going to be one of the better series that we're going to have a chance to watch. And it's gonna be exciting. But shout out the Denver Nuggets for taking this game. Jokic and Murray, that's a good duo right there. Jamal Murray's having a career year. He's been able to play. He's been balling, and he was balling in that game too. But like I said, we'll get to that in another video. But this was solid effort from the Denver Nuggets, and this series is gonna be probably one of the more entertaining ones of the first round. But with that, we're going to jump into our next series, and that is, I'm not entirely sure, I got to check, but we'll jump into the next series. I'll see you guys in a sec. Alrighty, so now we're taking a look at the Atlanta Hawks versus the New York Knicks series, and this one is also going to be an interesting series in the sense that I personally believe that the New York Knicks, they're going to be their own biggest critic slash interference in the series, and I'm only saying that as of seeing the second game of the series. But we're only focused on game one. Game one was a masterclass from the Knicks. It was pretty solid all around. A theme that we do notice in a lot of these games, at least with the Knicks and the 2-game sample size that I do have, is that their fourth quarters turn out always to be a little bit subpar. Their fourth quarters have been okay. In the playoffs, the last 2 games against this Hawks team, they have had some strange fourth quarters. So we'll stay focused on game one for now. Game one, there wasn't really a lot coming out of the Atlanta Hawks side of things. Jalen Johnson had 23, and Okongwu had 19. McCollum, was playing efficient with 4 threes, 26 points. So the starters were doing their things. I just kind of, when it boiled down, it just, they could not, the Knicks were just getting the stops that they needed when they needed them. Like if you look at the Knicks, I mean, we could take a look at the Hawks. Kuminga with 8 off the bench, and it was really the starters. 23 and 26, and 17 from some of your forwards. Dyson Daniels with 4. He didn't really play too well. And Dyson Daniels' play could have made or break, this team winning that game. But he did play pretty subpar in the last game, in game 1, and not really much production coming out the bench. Literally only 13 points coming out of there, as opposed to we have 9 and then 11. 9 and 8 make 17, and 17-3 make 20 point bench points. And then especially with the 10 percentage difference in 3-point percentage, albeit a little bit less volume, but that's, again, you have more efficiency coming up with the jump shots. The Knicks did take 10, 11 more free throws than the Atlanta Hawks, so definitely fouls played a big role in the game 1. And then if you take a look at the Knicks, you have Anunoby, 18. All the Knicks starters are in double digits, efficiently spreading the scoring around. And then the bench, everyone who did play, they did get some buckets. Jalen Brunson with 28, and that being the game high. Jalen Brunson, came to play game 1, so that was really it was really a whole team effort. Starters came to play. Deuce McBride hit 2 loud threes at the end of that. So he did have 6, and those 2 threes were the loudest threes in the game. He had a plus-minus of 12. That's not a coincidence. He was balling. But yeah, shout out the Knicks for their game 1 victory. And we'll jump into game 2 where we'll sadly go over that meltdown. But, shout out the Knicks for taking the game 1. And we'll jump into the next series. All right. And next, for that final game of the Monday, or I guess Saturday, round 1 would be the Lakers-Rockets, with the Lakers taking that one. And it was pretty surprising. No Luka Doncic, no Austin Reeves, no Kevin Durant. So it was a little bit of a, stars weren't really there, but you had LeBron James starting, playing pretty well. And the Houston Rockets, we had that whole All-Star game debacle with Kevin Durant and the whole burner and all that. But was he wrong? Was he wrong about his teammates? I don't know. So we have 43 minutes from Amen Thompson, Jabari Smith. Not really doing too much, inefficient scoring, 7 for 18, 5 for 14, 6 for 20 from Reed Shepherd. He has been playing a lot better after the All-Star break, but just not enough for the 17 and 5 threes. 14 threes is a little outrageous. Just saying, that's just me. I don't think I would want a player taking 14 threes in one game, especially in 36 minutes. A little inefficient, but hey, you got to take some open looks. Amen Thompson with his 17, again, a little inefficient. He's playing defense with 3 steals and a block, 2 turnovers, whatever, compared to 7 assists. He played relatively well. But you have Okogie with 7 and Amen Thompson. The 19 is not bad. 8 and 6 is pretty decent. Amen Thompson and Sengun doing their thing. Jabari Smith, kind of inefficient shooting again, 33% from 3. Same thing with Richard Shepard, again, almost 33% from 3. Just a little, that's not going to cut it. And then, you have 16 from Easton off the bench, which is fire. I feel like a lot of those points did come in garbage time from the highlights that I saw. And yeah, not really much bench production besides that. Only 6 points from all 3 other players who were able to play. And again, the big question, or the big concern, Kevin Durant with that knee contusion. Will that knee contusion be that 9-point difference that the Rockets are kind of hoping for? I say yes. I think KD can cover a 9-point difference with the Lakers. And we need to see if Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves, how long they're going to not be playing. I think KD might be back for game 2, which is tonight. But we'll have to just double check. And let's go ahead and take a look at the Lakers. LeBron with 19 and 13, almost triple-double. 13 assists, 2 turnovers. Like, come on, that's some Chris Paul level shit over there. And then Hashimura, he's been having a great shooting spell, especially in the postseason. I've really liked what I've seen. Same thing with DeAndre Ayton. He's actually turned around that abysmal start that he did have with the Lakers. So we'll see how this is fanning out. from Bronny James, with 4 minutes off the bench, not really getting too much action, but he is getting some playoff experience, so that's awesome. And the bench, the starters really came through with Luke Kennard, especially those 5 for 5 from three. That's pretty insane. But we as in the Lakers, I'm not a Lakers fan. We as the Lakers need to get a little bit more bench production. Jackson Hayes and Rivera, they can put up a little bit more. And with KD coming back, I think they're gonna need a lot more scoring on that end of things. So shout out the Lakers, and we'll see how they match up with Luka Doncic and them coming back. But I still have the Rockets in 7. This is going to be one of the more entertaining series out west as well. So yeah, I'm sticking with my Rockets prediction, but the Lakers came to ball game 1, and we'll see what they do tonight, game 2. So yeah, yeah. But with that, I'll see you guys on the next matchup, and yeah, shout out to the Lakers for taking game 1. All right, and next we have the Boston Celtics. This was our Sunday matchups. The first of the Sunday matchups being the Boston Celtics versus the Philadelphia 76ers. I think we can all agree that this was the belt to ass. One of the belt to asses that we expected out of the playoffs. Philly, they did. They won out the 7th seed, so they did have a little bit more time to come through and play. But the Celtics team is just so well put together that it was just kind of stressful. Paul George and Edgecombe combined for 30, but with a minus 36 plus minus combined on them, so defense wasn't their strongest suit, even though they are putting up 30 points. 30 points, and they're still giving up a net of 36 minus, so that's not really well. Therese Maxey with 21, he did have the team high. He has been playing really well. He had 30 in that game to put them into the playoffs, but I can only imagine that the 76ers were a little tired, a little gassed, while the Boston Celtics, not only did they have a chance to watch them play against another team, they also got more time to rest as well. And yeah, it wasn't really much coming out of the Philadelphia 76ers. It was pretty much a blowout every single quarter that they had, and at one point the largest lead was 35, and they did end up winning by 32. Yeah, not really much coming out of here from the Boston Celtics. Again, even VJ Edgecombe, our beloved VJ Edgecombe, the generator. Even in 30 minutes of action, not really much. Quentin Grimes, 7 points. Not really much going on there. They had, in terms of turnovers, 14 compared to the 8 with the Celtics. And let's just take a look at what's going on over here. 25, 11, and 7 with only a turnover, 2 steals from Jason Tatum. Crazy stat line. Sam Hauser, 4 threes. Those are 4 loud threes. Quetta, the Portuguese player, he 13 and how many rebounds? Only 2, but he still didn't play 15 minutes. He went 100% from the field. That's what you want to see. Derek White, 10 points, 6 assists, 3 rebounds, 1 steal, 1 turnover. Not bad at all. And same thing with Jaylen Brown, 26. So 26 and 25. 26 as a game high from Jaylen Brown, 11 of 21, so over 50% shooting. And then Vucevic off the bench, which was a masterful piece to add to the team. He had a loud 3 and 6 rebounds as well. So this team is very deep. Peyton Pritchard, 34, getting the most minutes on the floor, doing his thing, 21 plus minus. And yeah, this team is really well. The system's really well built for this squad, and the Boston Celtics are a team to keep your eye on. So, but you can see on the side here, largest blowout and playoff opener in Boston Celtics history. So that was a crazy matchup. Boston with the crazy win. I have Boston winning this out in 6. Hopefully VJ Edgecombe and Paul George, and I don't think Joel Embiid played. I don't see his name here. Hopefully they can make it competitive, but shout out to the Boston Celtics for being the game 1 winners, and we'll see what they do tonight as they play at 7. So yeah, shout out Boston. We'll see you guys in the next matchup. Alrighty, and next we're jumping into the round 1 or seed 1 versus seed 8 out west, which is the Oklahoma City Thunder versus the Phoenix Suns. Phoenix Suns did beat out the Warriors to get the 8 seed. And I had predicted it didn't matter who won out that 8 seed, Oklahoma City was coming to collect, and they certainly did. We could see they won by over 84, like over 30 points, 37, 35 to be exact. I'm sorry. So we have a 35-point win by the Oklahoma City Thunder, another belt to ass that day. We could clearly take a look. Not really much coming out from here. Again, it's been a story for Devin Booker. He has the game high. He also has a high in minutes for the team. 8 for 17, little under 50% shooting, 40% from three. But he does have the second largest box plus minus out of his team, or the second lowest with minus 25, only being beat out by Gillespie. And yeah, this team is, again, I said in a prediction, they're guard heavy. Bigs aren't really gonna do too much. Because look at the bigs that they do have. They have, let me see, no points. Igdoro, no points. O'Neal, he plays forward, but he plays a little undersized. A lot of 0-point matchups from this team, and I think that's more of a testament to the Oklahoma City Thunder's defense. It was pretty sweltering. You can see they only had 2 blocks for the Phoenix Suns versus 7 for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Chet Holmgren with 2, Hartenstein with 2, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with 2, Jalen with 1. And they also had 13 steals versus 3. That's literally like a 400% difference. A lot of points coming off of defense, alley-oops, easy transition buckets. The game really broke out of hand, like literally in the first quarter. It was 35-20 at the end of that, and then they also won the second quarter by 6. So we're already looking at a 21-point win or a 21-point deficit by half. Double digits, that's 31 by the end of the third. Like it was just a masterclass. Hopefully Phoenix can make it competitive, but I'm saying we as in for myself, but I think we can all agree that the Oklahoma City Thunder can easily go to the round 2, and Phoenix is on borrowed time with this squad. Look, like if you even look at the highlights, they're just toying around. Like Chet Ingram did hit that buzzer beater at the end of the quarter. Kind of a testament to show how they were gonna go into this series, and it's pretty. And the Oklahoma City Thunder, they shot about 30% from 3. They didn't shoot crazy numbers. That 45% difference, 10% difference in field goal for the Phoenix Suns and the Thunder, and then that almost 20% difference in free throws. They took 23 versus their 18, so it wasn't super drastic in free throw calls and shots, but the Thunder were making theirs, Suns weren't. That's how we get a 35-point win from them. So shout out OKC. Their defense is sweltering. Team should work out for them, but there's a reason they're a favorite coming out, and we will keep our eye on them. But this was a great way to set the tone. And we're going to get to that with another team in a second, but that's a great way to set the tone for your game 1. So shout out OKC for being the game 1 winners, and we'll jump into the next one. Okay, and now we're back, and we're taking a look at the other round 1 versus round 8 matchup, the Detroit Pistons versus the Orlando Magic. Now, this one I have a lot of, skepticism here. The Detroit Pistons, I will say they dropped the first game of the series. Banchero did have a great debut at 23-9 with 4 assists. Pretty good starting game. The Wagner twins, one of them did not play, but Franz Wagner did have 19 with 5 rebounds. Not a bad matchup at all. We did see the Orlando Magic starters play really good. They had 20 points coming off the bench with Anthony Black, De Silva, and the rest of those guys. Jalen Suggs with 16. It was a pretty solid matchup. I think this was more of a meltdown on the Detroit Pistons side of things. Okay, I know, like Orlando, they did have to play 2 games to win out. So, I could say confidently that most people thought they would have been about to ass with the Detroit Pistons and Orlando. But we're going to take a look at Detroit right now, see like what really went wrong there. Cade Cunningham had a 39 ball, but I think that might be a part of the problem. But we'll take a look at it. So Orlando, nothing really striking, pretty subpar 3-point shooting. They were hitting their field goals, free throws not so bad. It's pretty. They weren't getting to the free throw line as much as the Pistons were, but where did everything go wrong? And I think it all goes wrong right here, and I'm going to highlight it. Too many field goals from one player, too many shots from one guy. It's okay if he had 39, but if he had 39 on like 13 of like 16 shooting, 3 for 5 from three, 10 free throws, that would be a little bit better. Three turnovers is a little abysmal. Not really the worst with 4 assists. It's just like you're not generating enough points. Like 4 assists to 3 turnovers is like you're not generating enough points for the amount of time you're giving up the ball, which is fine, But with 39, it can kind of counter itself out. That's why that -5 is okay. Asar Thompson, 8. He's not really the most score heavy, but he did have 3 steals. And he was rebounding the ball like you'd expect. A little bit more on offense. 8 is not the worst, but you could do a little bit better than that. And I think Jalen Duren is one of the bigger we need to talk about that. He was my pick to him having a great game is going to determine if Detroit was going to win or not. And he had a pretty shitty game. 3 for 4 on the field, not 8 points, 7 rebounds. With 3 turnovers is kind of crazy. 1 block, whatever. A block is still good, but it's just not really adding much to the defensive side of things. And then you have Duncan Robinson, 50% from 3, 9 points, not the worst, but it wasn't allowed 9 points if you could say that. And then off the bench, a little spotty scoring wise. Again, 0 for 2, 1 for 2, 0 for 1. Not enough volume shooting for the team. Two people cannot take almost 40 shots. Like, that's not going to work. Like, you took 77, and of those 77, 42 of them came from 2 players on the starting lineup. Not going to work, and it's not going to happen. 5 for 15, 30%, like, that's not going to work. A little bit under 50% shooting, not going to work. Not efficient enough. And you get into the free throw line, which is good, but, that can only, they can only get you so far. You got to make some shots. So it looks, from what I can determine, it looks like the Detroit Pistons shot themselves out of the game. Poor shooting, poor 3-point balls, 40% from the field, not making those easy ones. Free throws wasn't even a factor because he got a 15-point advantage on top of that. So it was just a poor performance from this Detroit squad. I don't see them playing like this again, but I think it is showing that they are vulnerable of the squad. And they're literally not. You don't have to be too afraid of the Detroit Pistons. They're number 1 seed, but they're giving me like. I'm thinking of a team number 1 seed, like Atlanta Hawks. Like, they give me that vibe. They playing good, but not really. 60 wins is nothing to sneeze at, but this was a meltdown at home. So we're gonna have to pay attention to that. And when it comes to some of these teams that are a lot better, is just going to be the story. So there's a lot of stuff to take away from this game and a lot of talk about. But, we'll save that as the series goes along. But, again, I have the Detroit Pistons winning this series. I just don't know. I don't know. I have them winning this. They did start off pretty slow, but maybe they might reverse sweep them. Who knows? But, shout out to Orlando for winning, man. I got to give Banchero and those guys their credit, Wendell Carter their credit. They did do what they had to do. They're showing that defensive side of things. They also did have 6 blocks. I also didn't talk about that. But, they did play a little bit more defense, so they locked in more. Maybe this series can be a little bit more competitive. I'll eat my words if they do. But I still have Detroit going at 5 or 6. So shout out to Orlando again for winning. But let's jump into the next series. All right. And for the final game of the Game 1 of the 2026 first round. Playoff series would be the San Antonio Spurs versus the Portland Trailblazers. And like we had said in the play-in, I predicted the Portland Trailblazers would play in. And this is Victor Wembanyama's debut as a NBA player, and he did not disappoint, obviously. Portland, they played their whole entire squad. They couldn't crack 100 points. And I think that's a testament to the San Antonio Spurs on defense. That game was pretty, they up by 9 and then they were up by 10 to go into the half. And I don't think they ever really let the gas off the pedal since they jumped into the game. Let's jump into these players. Game high at 30 from, well, 30 wasn't the game high. 30 was the team high for Portland with at Via 12 for 21. Again, we're having a little bit of the same conversation here as we did with that Portland series. One or two players, I mean, it was spread out a little bit more. Donovan Clingan with, 7 shots. Camara with 7 shots, not the worst, some threes. So it was a little bit more spread out on the starting lineup level. But one player with or doing the bulk of the scoring is never going to be the answer. Atvia had literally, if they had 90, he had almost 33% of their scoring. Not really too efficient. Abysmal 3-point shooting. We're talking 25% here. It was like nobody could really find the bottom of the basket. And not really too much free throw attempts here. They took 10 or 12 versus almost 20 from the Spurs. So it was almost like the Spurs were a lot more physical, a lot more assertive. And we like to see that, turnover wise, the Spurs did have more turnovers. And, the Portland Trailblazers put up a fight, but it was just not nearly enough. And obviously, like from Jeremy Grant, only 5 points off the bench. They're gonna need a lot more points from him. Same thing with Camara, 8, not really doing too much. But I think we're harping a little bit more on the Trailblazers, and we're not giving enough credit to the Spurs. And the Spurs played really good. 4 out of their 5 players out of double digits. Victor Wembanyama had 35. That was literally his playoff debut. I think one of the most in a debut ever. 5 for 6 from 3. 5 rebounds. This guy's stat line is always crazy, so it's pretty funny. De'Aaron Fox doing his thing, 17, 8 assists, no turnovers. That is the type of stat line you want to see from him. Vassell, 15 with 2 assists, and then you have Stephon Castle, doing his thing, and then the rest of the players kind of evening things out. 10 from Cornette off the bench, which was pretty fire. 6 from Harper as well. And yeah, pretty balanced attack. Not really needing to do too much. No players playing more than 35 minutes. Everybody kind of just rotating and doing their thing. But I think this was a good win for San Antonio, and just like how they did with Oklahoma City, another series that should be done in 5 or 6 games. So shout out to the San Antonio Spurs. And that is the coverage of all of the game ones, man. I want to thank you guys for joining me on this one. That one was pretty intense. We got to see a lot of the storylines and narratives there. And I'm excited for game 2 because there was a lot of action on Monday, 420. That video will probably come out Wednesday night or Thursday morning. So just be on the lookout for that. But again, we're having a blast covering the playoffs, man. And I want to thank you guys for joining me on the coverage of the game ones. And I'll see you guys in the next one, man. Peace out, ciao. See you later.